Go.
Hi, I'm Lara Ehrlich, coming to you live from Writer Mother Monster, a new series about writer moms. With me today is Amy Shearn, and Amy is the author of the novels Unseen City, The Mermaid of Brooklyn, and How Far is the Ocean from Here. She's a senior editor at Forge, a fiction editor at Joyland, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, Slate, Literary Hub, and many other publications. She has an MFA from the University of Minnesota, and she lives in Brooklyn with her 2 children. So, with no further ado, welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so you are our first guest on this new series. So thank you also for being my guinea pig tonight.
I'm so happy to be. It also means I can't be your worst guest. This is great news for me.
You would never be the worst guest. So you and I already had an event together a couple weeks ago now. We're both authors for Hen Press, and your book just came out. Was it last week?
I don't know. What's the date?
A little crazy.
It might have been the week before last. It was September 29th.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're getting wonderful reviews for Unseen City. I'm always thrown off by how the mirror imaging works on this platform.
Right.
So to our guests out there, anyone tuning in, you can comment and ask us questions, and your questions will pop up here in StreamYard, which is where we are broadcasting from, so we can incorporate them into the conversation, and we welcome chatting and any questions you might have. So Amy, just to start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell me about, obviously I gave your writing credits already, but tell me about where you are from and a bit about your family.
Oh, like my current family?
Yes.
What's
family? Yes, your current family. Tell us about your kids, since we're both writer moms.
I'm like, how far back do I need to go?
No, just current family.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Well, I live here in Brooklyn, New York. Much to my surprise, I've lived here for 15 years now, although I'm originally from the Midwest. I'm from a suburb of Chicago called Highland Park. I feel like it's really important to name the suburb because real Chicago people are like, you're from Chicago? Really? Where? The city? The suburb? Mm-hmm. So just to be clear, I'll just say that up front.
Okay.
And yeah, I have 2 awesome kids. I have a 9-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter, which are really fascinating ages. And they both seem to be writers, which is
interesting.
Fun. What can you do? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in how those ages are and how they're interesting. I have a 4-year-old myself, so I know you remember that stage, and we can talk about that as well, having a very young child and writing your first 2 novels.
Yeah, it's such a different ball game. Mm-hmm. I remember, I'm sure your 4-year-old isn't like this, but I remember with one of my 4-year-olds talking to their pre-K teacher, and the teacher saying, here's the thing about 4-year-olds is they're sociopaths, and that's okay. That's a developmental stage. That's the developmental stage where they are. And then they're about to learn all the like social cues and, you know, some system of sort of rough ethics and things like that, but they're not there yet. Like, it's a wild age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I kind of think that every age that my kids are, I'm like, this is the most fascinating age. Wow. This is the best one. And then, well, I don't always think it's the best one, but, and then they get a little older and I'm like, no, this is the most fascinating age.
Mm-hmm.
I think just like your own kids are very interesting to you.
Yeah, I have the same thought as well. I'm like, when will she not be cute? There might be a time when she won't be cute, but so far I haven't found it.
Yeah, you're still in the era where like just everything they say is cute just because they're saying it.
Yeah, it's true. And we have a lot to talk about with kids. But next, just tell us a bit about your full-time career. So you're also an editor.
Yeah. So I'm an editor at an online publication called Forge. It's part of Medium, if you know medium.com. And Forge is a personal development publication. So I like write and edit content that's just trying to help people kind of live their best life and improve as people, which is really interesting. It's a really good space to be in, especially right now with just everything that's going on. It feels really nice to have my work be just like trying to make people, I don't know, feel better and just be their best selves kind of. It's a really interesting job. It's funny because I always thought, I got an MFA in creative writing, and I thought that I would probably end up teaching because that was just what all the writers that I knew of did. It just seemed like the job that writers had. And then I moved to New York and found that like I couldn't really afford to teach actually, and also that I found it really, really super draining. Like I'm fine for a couple hours in the classroom, and then I'm like, I need a nap in a quiet room for 3 days. Like I guess maybe you get used to it, but I kind of stumbled into editing, which as it turns out, I feel like is a great path for me. And I feel like editing makes you a better writer and writing makes you a better editor. So it's a good combo.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so can you share one of your favorite pieces of advice from your own editing job? So what have you discovered about what we should be doing right now to take care of ourselves during a pandemic?
Well, so you know what is funny? I'll tell you. Something that's really super popular among the readers of our publication is Stoicism, and like anything that has to do with the ancient philosophy, but also sort of the modern iteration of Stoicism. And so I've worked here for actually, I just had my 1-year anniversary for a year. And for months, I was like, ew, Stoicism, why? It's so boring. And it just seems so like male and like it was just about sort of telling you not to have emotions or something. And I just thought like, I don't know why people are so into this. I find this really boring. So then I ended up, my fellow staff members were like, it'd be great if you wrote something about Stoicism because you're a skeptic here. So this summer I kind of did a deep dive and ended up writing this feature about Stoicism and actually finding it super useful. It's so annoying. But the whole thing is just knowing what you can control and what you can't control, and sort of looking at the world and saying, and looking at your life and saying, okay, what's happening right now? What am I feeling about it? This thing that's causing me stress, is it something I can control? And if not, all I can deal with are my own emotions about it and just sort of surrender a little bit. And if it is something I can control, then I adjust and deal with it. But just there's a lot more to Stoicism than that. But that whole question of the whole practice of just giving up what you can't control is so useful in this time when there's so much that's crazy and stressful and that I really am not in control of, as powerful as I am. So that's, I have to admit, super helpful.
Yeah, helpful for everyone, I think, but especially mothers.
Yeah.
So let's get into the mother writers. And I think that's a great segue into that conversation because as women, at least I feel like I always need to be in control of everything, right? Like our day jobs and our families, and we have to make sure that our kids have their doctor's appointments and their lunches and all the things that we need to take care of as moms. And then the writing time, I found, because it's for yourself, it's a personal act, right? Tends to be the thing that falls off the priority list as writer moms. Is that something that you've found? Or that's my personal experience, but tell me a little bit about yours and how all of these different balls get prioritized up in the air.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard. Right. as a mother and as sort of like I feel like like a contemporary sort of, I don't know, like creative class type urban mother. There's like a certain kind of mothering you're supposed to do. And right, there's this, you sort of need to be in control and kind of on top of everything. And of course, that doesn't have to be the mother, but like every heterosexual couple I know has that dynamic.
Yeah.
Um, and you're also, it's like you're expected to do all of these things at such a high level. You're supposed to, work like you don't have kids and parent like you don't work. And then if you have creative work too, that's like another layer. And I think, honestly, something that helped me with that, I think, is like having my whole life just be forced off the rails. Which like I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but in the last year, like, yes, I've lived through this pandemic with all of y'all, but I also separated from my husband, moved out. I am in a different place now. I now co-parent my kids with my ex, and I think just so many bananas things happened all at once that I was like, whatever.
Like you had to give up some control.
Right. Yeah. You're like, all right, I'm just doing what I can. I'm doing my best. So there's that. That's a technique if anyone wants to try it. And then also I think just like being forgiving of yourself. Like something that's helped me is being aware of how much my daughter and my son, but my daughter is watching me, and thinking about like the kind of woman and mother I want her to be or feel like she has to be. And I would never want her to grow up and think, oh my God, I have to do everything perfectly, with total control. And like, that's so stifling. And if you're a creative person, it's just so much of being creative is like giving up control and letting a little bit of wildness in sometimes, so whenever I start feeling bad, like we were talking earlier about how saying my kids really have loved the past few weeks because I've been super busy with the book launch and a big thing at work. And they were like, wow, our lunches lately have been awesome. Cause my daughter actually said, she was like, I'm really into your benign neglect. I was like, oh, good.
Oh, no.
I'm glad that you like that because that's great. But like they see that they know that I love them more than anything and that they're, my most important priority. But they also know that I have other stuff going on in my life and that adults have things and that even moms have other things that they're doing. Like my son said to me recently, he said, I feel like your job is your job, but your writing is your profession. Wow. And I was like, yes. And I'm glad that you can see this, but it's like, they can see that because they see me making it a priority and they know that it's a part of my life. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, yeah, that's great. And very helpful to hear, I think. That's solidarity, that it's definitely hard and the balance is hard and that sometimes things go off the rails, like you said, and we lose control. And the only thing we can do is the best we can. And our kids don't know the level of perfection we're shooting for, right? So they can only live their experience. And as long as they're safe and happy and we're giving them a good example, maybe that's sufficient.
Yeah,
right? That's good.
All of us right now, our kids are watching us like live through a crazy time and they're learning from us, and so if we're like, okay, this is what I can control, this is what I can't control, this is how I deal with this stress, that's like what they're learning. So it's totally fair to like have emotions in front of our kids and to be like, hey, I'm juggling a lot right now and these things are important to me and here's why. It like gives them permission to have things that are important to them too, and to value and prioritize their own like things that they want to do, but their own kind of passions, their own professions when they're grown-up novelists themselves.
Exactly. No, and I think, my daughter who's 4, I still have those conversations with her. I don't think that she's too young for that.
Yeah.
So I think any listeners out there, it's, I think, so important to treat these little people like, I wouldn't say peers, but to respect them enough to have that conversation and say, I'm working on something right now. This is my work or this is my writing, and it's important to me and it makes me who I am and it validates me as a person, as a woman, as a writer, and I want you to know that it's important. But
Yeah.
it's not more important than you. It's just
Right.
that I need to work on this right
It's
now.
also
And
important.
mhm,
Right. And like your daughter, I think, is like my kids, and that when kids are readers themselves,
mhm,
or if they take in any media, so any child, I think it's fair to talk to them and say, like, somebody had to make this. Do you like
mhm,
it? Somebody had to make it, and like put a lot of work into it, and it doesn't
yeah,
just appear. And if you want there to be cool things in the world, like somebody's got to take time making them, and maybe that means that week they didn't, like, I don't know, bake you some muffins or something, but but they will eventually. I don't know.
yeah, and to show them the end product. I mean, I have shown my daughter my book and gave her a copy, and I said, look, it's dedicated to you. I wrote this for you. Your name's in here. And she was just thrilled with that too. Even, and probably she'll understand that a lot more as she gets older. And that's another thing, is that our kids might not be able to fully understand right now, but when they get older and they look back and they say, oh, my mom was working on this
Yeah.
thing that is dedicated to me, even if it's, not everybody dedicates their books to their kids, and that's fine, but you know.
This one was not dedicated to my kids. This one was dedicated to my parents, and my kids were like,
Mhm.
"What the hell?" Well, the last one was dedicated to you guys, and they were like, "Okay, we
Mm,
want the next one too." And
okay.
I was like, "All right, we'll talk."
Now,
You?
have they read your books? They're still a little young, but have they read?
They're a little young. They both made a big show of Unseen City being like, I'm gonna read this. And they it was actually, I feel like, the best moment of my life. They were going through it together and just picking out all the swear words. And I was like, I've raised you
Mm.
right, and this is amazing. They were just like, oh, I found another one. And my son, actually, the littler one, was like, I'm going to read this whole thing. And he was sitting down, he was really reading through it. And then he was like, Mama, I don't really find this that interesting. I was like, you know what? It's really, you're not totally the audience. Like, maybe give it a couple of years. I don't know why they would find it interesting, but they are, they're very supportive and they're very aware. And they're like, if we go to a bookstore and my book is there or something, they're really excited about it. And they'll be my little like PR agents sometimes. Like,
Mhm.
they're talking to someone, I'll be like, well, my mom has a new book and it just came out, and it's cute. It's cute to see them like be excited about it.
Totally. Now, before you became a mother, what preconceptions did you have about writing and motherhood?
That's such a good question. And it's something that I know from our previous conversations that you thought about a lot. And I
Mhm.
feel like maybe I actually didn't think enough about it. Or I didn't think very clearly about it. Like, I definitely had a self as a writer before I was a mother. I had gone to graduate school and my first book had been published. Actually, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter the day after my first book came out, which was just like, whoa, everything's happening. Okay.
Yeah.
But so I think that helped a little bit because I don't know. I mean, I know that I don't think this is true, but I think before people have published, they sometimes, particularly women, have a hard time calling themselves a writer, or
Mhm.
justifying writing time if it's like nothing that anyone can ever see an end result of. So I feel like it really helped me in those first few years when I was sort of like, oh, what's happening? Weirdly in the back of my head, I was like, I know I have a book. People, that book is in the world, and someday I'll have another one. Um, and I think that gave me like a little bit of permission to make writing the second book, this book. Like, I have like a pointer, like I'm like taking notes. notes, but just in case.
That's okay. I've got mine 2 pens right here just in case.
I have like 3 notebooks here. Like, I don't know is there going to be a test? I guess
maybe.
Okay, so I am going to hold on to this pen then. But I don't know, because I feel like it's always a leap of faith, and it's always hard especially when you have little kids and a partner who has needs, to be like, okay, I was home with them when they were really little. And then on the weekend, I'd be like, okay, cool. You're home. I need to go take some time to write. And that's like, no one's ever really happy to hear that. Everybody wants you to be the mom and wife who's home and doing stuff for them. And it's hard, and it makes it's really easy to like fall into that trap of like, oh yeah, I shouldn't be so selfish and take time away from the family and work on the book. But I feel like I was often also able to justify it in that because I get really crabby when I'm not writing. So it's like, all right, this is actually better for everyone if I'm writing. But I didn't have but to more clearly answer your question, I didn't have a very clear plan about how I was going to keep writing after I was a mother. Like, I knew I wanted to, and I probably actually should have. I would recommend this. You guys, if you're about to have kids, or you're planning on having kids, and you're a writer, sit down with your partner and have a real conversation that's like, I am going to need this much, and this is so hard to do, but like, I'm going to need this much time to work on my writing. When are we going to make this happen? I mean, that's like such a privileged thing to say. Like, it's such a privilege to be able to say that. But I think that it probably would have been smart to do that. But yeah, I had a couple of years of like having a baby and working on a book and just fitting in the writing time when she was napping, or when I could get someone to watch her for a couple hours, and feeling guilty about it the whole time. That was like not a good plan. But yeah.
Well, before I became a mother, my husband I'm very, very lucky to have a very supportive husband and somebody who wants to give me that time and encourages me to take it.
Yeah.
And he was the one who said, we need to make sure that you take time for writing. This is important. And I was the one who, when my daughter was born, held myself back from doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think your word selfish is a very apt one, where we feel, and maybe this is a female thing, I don't know, but where we feel selfish for taking that time. And I think, again, it goes back to the point that writing, unless you have a book contract already that you're writing toward and you have accountability in that way, it does feel like a personal venture, doesn't it? It's something you do by yourself in a room with space and time that's just for you. And if you don't have that book contract where you're getting paid at the end, it feels like it feels selfish, even if it's not. And that's very hard to combat. How do you deal with that feeling of selfishness, which is something I think probably everyone who's listening can understand and probably feels?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so important to like have someone in your corner who you can sort of delegate to like check you on that stuff, and like for you, it sounds like that's your partner, and that's lucky and very convenient. But maybe it's like I have some very supportive writer friends who I do not know how I would survive without them, but who will like talk me down from that and be like, no, this isn't selfish. That you are a writer, you need to write. Don't be stupid, just do it. Yeah, it's like a little bit been on hold just in pandemic times, but for the past few years, I've been connected with this amazing group of women writers and artists who, like a couple times a year, will all coordinate sort of a DIY writing residency. And it's inspired by Lenka Clayton. She's this artist, and she started this thing called the Artist Residency in Motherhood. And she has this amazing website, you should check it out, where she has all these materials to sort of like do your DIY writing residency. And it's so helpful because she literally has signs you can print out. She has, let's see, I think I have my card right here. Cards you can get. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Yeah, try to stick it right. There we go. I see it.
Artist in residence in motherhood. And
That's
then on the back
amazing.
it says mine was 4 days. My first one was 4 days. The fragmented mental focus, exhaustion, nap length studio time, and other distractions of parenthood, as well as the absurd poetry of time spent with children, will be my working materials rather than obstacles to overcome. Isn't that great?
And I love that. Yeah.
Good thing I have this right here so I don't forget. And I think it's something like that, whether it's like signing yourself up for that residency and sort of making yourself accountable, or connecting with a group of other creative friends, or just having someone who will like check you when you're sort of getting wrapped up in your bullshit and just be like, because it's so easy to see in someone else, like, no, of course you need to do your work. That's crazy. Why wouldn't you? That's not selfish. It just makes sense. But sometimes you need like that outside voice, I think, to remind you.
Yeah, and sometimes it is helpful too to think. I mean, this is kind of like a therapy session thing to say, but to say like, what would you tell your friend if your friend were a writer? Would you tell them, "Oh, you're being selfish. You should never sit by yourself and work on your book," or would you say, "Of course, like you just said, of course you should take that time and work on your creative work. That's just as important as your day job or your children or your spouse." And actually, I love the recommendation to do a retreat in that way, whether it is formal, like going to a formal retreat somewhere that is designed or not designed for mothers, or something that I've started doing, which is just to get an Airbnb for a night, just in the next town over, and go somewhere else. And it's like, it could be sort of a cheap Airbnb and just spend the whole time in the room, and it's just mine. And something about having that place that's dedicated time and place really, I feel like, makes you buckle down and just plow through as much work as you possibly can.
Totally. Yeah. And what I've done a couple times as part of this artist in residence in motherhood thing is, connect with a couple other friends and say like, and just like plan it, you hold yourself accountable and you're like, okay, this is the weekend we're going. And I don't think we've ever rented an Airbnb. It's always been like, so-and-so's out of town. This awesome novelist friend, Miranda Beverly Whitmore, who's a great novelist and a great friend and very good at locating these places. She'll like call me and be like, okay, so my friend is not in their house on Long Island for this week and we can have it for free. And then she's also very good about snacks, which if you've ever been on like an established residency, like being fed is kind of the best part. And it's like not having to think about food is so important. But there's something about, especially if you've been sort of doing that like mother writing of like scribbling when, the baby's down for a second, or like I always think about waiting in line at the Y to register for toddler ballet and like going through the proofs of The Mermaid of Brooklyn, being like, be back soon, always carrying them around in the stroller. Like when you're used to like just buying time and finding time wherever you can get it, that to have, even 2 days or even an entire day of uninterrupted focus, it's like a drug. It's like the best.
Yes, I had other writer friends tell me before I had a child that their focus did turn laser after they had kids, because then when they had that time and space, it was like, okay, time to work, and they were not distracted by anything. And I find the same thing. If I have that time that I've devoted to writing, it's like, nope, don't want to stop for lunch, don't want to, take a shower. I'm just going to sit here and work.
Oh, totally. I had someone ask me like, how do you keep from getting distracted or blocked in your writing time? I was like, I can't, I don't have enough time to get distracted or to procrastinate or anything. I don't have time.
Oh, how else has your writing changed since you became a mother? So both in like the laser focus, that's one way, but what are some other ways?
That's so interesting. Like, I feel like it's a good question. I feel like in the same way that being a mother changes you as a person or changed me as a person, it's like, I almost feel like it sort of like sharpened my empathy in a way that like for a couple years after having my first baby, I was like, I couldn't like read or see anything scary at all or like violent at all. Cause I was just like, that's somebody's baby, even if it's like a schlocky horror movie or something. But I think it's like, you just like all of a sudden are going around the world like everyone is somebody's baby. And it just like gives you this intense empathy for everyone. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I was like a like mean person before I had kids, but I definitely remember getting that note in workshops. Like, I don't think you love all your characters, and being like, what are you talking about? And now it's like, I get it. Like, I really do love all my characters in a really intense way. 'Cause it's like, I don't know. I don't know. It's like my empathy muscles got stronger. I don't know how to finish that metaphor.
Yeah.
I don't know what muscles do. They're better now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I think something that I think is hard about writing as a mother is like, as a mother, your goal is to like make things nice and to take care of people and make things pleasant. And then in writing, you know, it's much better for your writing if you're not doing that and you're not trying to be pleasant and you're trying to be as like honest and raw and real as possible. And it's like, I find it like a slightly harder to get there now. You know, I actually think it's coming back a little bit, but and that has to do with like other things too, but just, I don't know, like getting to that sort of more like untamed place is, I don't know. It's like, that's harder for a while, I think.
Is there a scene from one of your books that you could point to that was really difficult to get into that mental space for?
That's a really good question. You know, I could, because I read it aloud last night. I think that was at this I was doing a reading and just read the very beginning of this book and of Unseen City, and I always knew that I wanted this character to be somebody who, the main character of the book, it was really important to me that she is somebody who's trying to find her own way in life and not trying and trying specifically not to sort of live life the way people expect a woman to. And she's never been married. She never wants to be married. She doesn't want to become a mother. And she's really adamant about that. And I feel like that stuff was hard to write. At the time, I was a wife and a mother. And I, you know, a little part of me was like, oh, are people going to read this and be mad at me because my character is like this? And yeah, but I was like, I knew that that was important for her, and I had to get her there, you know, even if it didn't feel polite or, you know. Yeah. And then actually a lot of The Mermaid of Brooklyn, which is weird because I wrote that when my kids were littler, and I was still married. When you have to like answer to a spouse, it's like hard to write certain stuff. And that character is about like a very stressed out mother of 2 children. So then I was like, oh no, people are going to think this is mean. Someday my kids are going to read this and think that I didn't like them or something. And then as it turns out, like people think, I feel like especially for women writers, like people think your main character is you no matter what. And it's just a thing that they do and you just can't fight it. And it's a little insulting because it's a little bit like, you know, there's this sort of subtext of like, oh, well, how could a woman really create something from scratch? Obviously, she's just writing about herself. And then there's a little bit of like, of course, every character is you. It's ridiculous. Every single character from every book I've written came out of my head. I invented them all. It's all made up. So of course, there's part of me. I don't know. But.
No, yeah, it's a weird dichotomy, isn't it? I felt like at one of the first events I did for Animal Wife, I felt like I had to say, because my parents and my daughter were watching, I was like, I want everyone to know that I love my daughter and I love my parents. Yeah, it's like, I do not want to leave my family, even though many of my characters do. Yeah, you kind of feel like you need to make that apology
I know.
for yourself, which is sort of problematic, I think. And I would say it's not just kind of insulting, it's very insulting that women get asked that question and men often don't. How much of that character is you? What part is autobiographical, particularly when it comes to like sex scenes and things? It's like, do you really want to know? Why are you asking me that question?
Yeah, also, like, what a boring question. I
Right.
just think it's so not interesting. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. That's for you to think about, I guess.
Yeah, if you must, I guess.
Yeah. But then, like, something that helps me when I get stuck in that is I think about like my ideal reader who is like for Mermaid of Brooklyn, I was like, all right, it's a little scary to write about like an unhinged mother, but like I think that well, actually, what gave me the idea for that book, part of it was being at the playground next to another mother, and we were like pushing our little like teeny babies. They must have been like 8 months old, like just old enough to sit in the swing and but also let us have a conversation, so not toddlers yet, and pushing the swings, and the other mother saying, I can't find I want to read a novel about a mom like me, a mom I can relate to. And I feel like I can't find this book that I want. And I want a book that's like really honest and honest about like the great things about motherhood and the crazy things about motherhood. And now this is very funny to me because now I'm like, people with babies don't know anything about motherhood. But but especially that early stage of motherhood when it is kind of just still about you and you're like, well, my identity's changed. This is so crazy. And you're not actually like dealing with the kid as a kid yet. But anyway, and I was like, ooh, okay, I'm going to write that book for her. And she never knew that she could never know that that she like inspired this whole book. But just thinking about like the reader out there who needs this book or who will be moved by this book, or thinking about like the times that I've connected with a book and didn't know the author, which is the majority of books. And like that, like the sort of like amazing intimacy of that relationship, like the relationship between the writer and the reader who never meet each other, I feel like is amazing and almost like, I don't know, otherworldly and why, of course, I wanted to write in the first place, so I feel like I have to like remember that and remember that the people I know who like the lovely people that I work with and like the other moms at school who are like, oh, I read your book. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Oh, I don't talk about it anymore. Like that's just the vast majority, one hopes, of the people who will encounter your writing. And it's not for them. And it's not like, I mean, it is, and it's great when they read it and are nice about it. But and it's not like for me as a person, it's like a different part of me that's being tapped into. Do you know what I mean? If that
Yeah, no, that's great. And I love that story about the mother at the swing set. And what was the feeling that you wanted to tap into when writing that book specifically? So when you pictured that woman and how she said she wanted a book for me, and like, this is the book I want to read, what was the overall feeling that you wanted to capture with Mermaid of Brooklyn?
Well, so she, partial disclosure, because I'm not going to say the name of the book, but she was talking about another book she had just read that was very popular at the time in, let's see, this was 2009, 2010. That was like about Brooklyn moms and was supposedly like the Brooklyn Mom book. And
I remember that book.
And she read it and was like, this is like, these are very like glamorous moms and they're just like having sex all the time and they're super chic and what the hell, like I'm a real Brooklyn mom and I'm losing my goddamn mind. And she was somebody who had a career that she really cared about. She chose to be home with her baby. The baby was like 8 months old or whatever, and she was already like, oh my God, I love this baby so much, but like, what, this is not what I was trained for my entire adult life, and she was like a particularly neurotic mom. And she was like, I love my kids so much. I love being a mom so much. I also feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know what the rest of my like life and identity is going to be like. Raising kids in the city is bananas. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's good. this is so hard on my marriage, and like, what the hell? And so it was this combination of like that, and I had this idea in my head for a while. I'd actually written it as an essay in graduate school, and a very smart friend of mine, Amanda Fields, read the essay and wrote, "This is a novel, not an essay." And I was like, don't tell me what to do, but it turned out she was right. That was like, there was a family story that my great grandmother had been depressed, had been standing on a bridge, took her shoes off and was going to jump into the water, and then looked at her shoes and was like, no, I love those shoes. I don't want to leave those. I don't want anyone else with those shoes. I'm not going to jump. And then she went on, she had a very like troubled life, and she actually married and divorced the same man twice, which I just think is fascinating. And anyway, so I guess they only got, anyway, so there was like this family story, and she was from Eastern Europe, like Lithuania area. And I had tried to write an essay sort of about that family story and mermaids, like Eastern European folklore. And the mermaids in Eastern European folklore are called rusalkas, and they're like not nice mermaids. They're like mean, scary mermaids who, seduce sailors and then like kill them. I was trying to like weave together these storylines. And then when this mom was like, I want a mom book for me, I was like, ooh, somehow to me, it made perfect sense. I was like, I'm living this weird world of like Park Slope, Brooklyn parenting, which feels so, it's just a novel itself. It's so off the wall. So it was like that, this woman with her shoes, this weird relationship, it all makes sense.
That's fascinating. So tell me, because the book I'm working on right now is a book about a mother, and the same about sirens and, the dark side of mermaids and the ones who destroy sailors and everything. What do you think it is about sirens or selkies that lend themselves to stories about mothers?
That's so cool. I want to read that book. Finish it.
I know. I have to read yours too. I've read Unseen City, but I need to read all of the others.
Well, maybe don't, though, if you're like trying to.
Yeah, I'll read it later. I'll read it after.
Because how you can like, I don't know. I don't want to psych you out. When you're like, oh, wait, that book is like, I couldn't read any other ghost novels while I was writing Unseen City. So I was like, oh, I'm going to read something and then feel like I can't be like original with my ghosts anymore. Anyway.
Can't either, but go on.
But okay, so then when that book comes out, we'll talk about mermaids. It's interesting. Well, there's something that I think you already know this because of in your book, Animal Wife, there's so many like transforming characters and sort of like half person, half animal, mythical creature, fairy tale creature types. And I think that makes total sense to me because there's something so weird and transformative about motherhood, and also like physically transformative in a way that's so weird. I mean, I don't know if everyone, when they get pregnant and give birth the whole time, is just like, whoa. For me, I was like, what? This is crazy. This is really how we propagate this species. This is the system. This is nuts. Like, what? And I think part of that, like, dissonance too, is just, I don't know, living the way that many of us live, like so disconnected from like our sort of mammal selves. And then all of a sudden to be like, what? I was at work at an office today and not seeing any sunlight or breathing air and living in a computer. And also I'm growing a person in my guts. That's bananas. Like I just couldn't get over it the whole time. Well, the second pregnancy, I was more over it. I was like, right. It's miracles. But it's so weird in the way it transforms your body and the way you become so aware of yourself as an animal, like nursing babies. It's just like so nuts. So yeah, I think that it like puts you in touch with that sort of animal part of you, and you're so connected to and you're transforming, and then watching a baby grow and transform into a child is like the most fascinating thing. But yeah, I think like things, I don't know, stories like that about like half person, half animals, just they make total sense to me as like good metaphors. Yeah, I think we talked about this before. You have that great story in Animal Life about the woman who wants to become a deer and like sort of like deer exoskeleton for herself. And I've written a short story about a woman who's a fawn who's like half person, half kind of goat, and who just like lives in New York City and is just like trying to figure it out like any of us. She just happens to be a fawn. And to me, I was like, this is like, it's like a woman who's trying to deal with sort of the wildness inside her and domesticate it and be like, no, I'm not a wild animal. I'm totally normal lady just living in the city. It's like you're a woman with like the opposite, trying to like undomesticate herself. But yeah, I don't know.
Do you feel like that as a mother? I often do. I kind of feel like there's like this wild restlessness, but then you have to like make dinner.
Yeah.
Or like clean the toilet or something.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, I think I loved, now I'm just talking about your book. I loved there's a couple stories about women just kind of taking off. And I feel like that's such, I don't know if it's a universal feeling, but I feel like it's definitely something that a lot of people have. And there's this great book that I think I already like yelled at you to read called Norma Jean the Termite Queen. That's like, it's like a early 80s, I think, novel, but it's about a mother who kind of does just that. And she's just like, I can't take it anymore. And kind of takes off and drives away. But I remember like a Facebook group that I'm in those years, like when they were toddlers, someone just posted like, am I crazy? Does anyone just kind of want to get in the car and drive away sometimes, or just like just keep walking away? And everyone was like, oh my God, yes, I thought it was just me. And I felt so much shame about this. And I feel like, I don't even know if that's like motherhood so much as just like domestic life, like, especially when the kids were little, I felt like, I was like, all right, the parenting part of this is great, but it's the other stuff that's a real drag, like all the like, and that was like in my relationship, a problem of division of labor too, that maybe other people have figured out better. But just being like, wow, really? Like I used to have a career and I have a master's degree and here I am just cleaning up after everyone all the time. and just like, God, and I'm just thinking about all these other books now. And my friend Siobhan Adcock's great novel, The Barter, there's a great scene where this mother who's in like that very situation is just like, and here I am putting the same slightly damp sippy cup on the same shelf, just like I did yesterday, just like I'm going to tomorrow. Like I think about that image all the time, but it's like, just like the domestic stuff is so stultifying and boring. And I don't know, like who wouldn't want to just run away from that, I think.
No, it's true. Have you read Elena Ferrante's Days of Abandonment? That one?
Have.
I love the fact, so that one's about a mother trapped in her apartment with her 2 kids.
Such a nightmare. Like the lock breaks and they're like, oh!
Yes, and it's all so mysterious in that you don't know if her breakdown is physical, in that like her lock really breaks and she can't get out, or if it's mental and that she just can't remember how to unlock her door.
Right.
And it was so relatable in that she's walking through her apartment. She's like, okay, I need to make a phone call to like get the lock fixed. And on the way there, she like has to pick up, oh, well, I need to put this in the laundry. And then at the laundry, she's like, oh, but here's some broken glass on the floor. Oh, but before I do that, I need to do this. And like, she never gets to where she's trying to go.
Right.
And it was that sense of all the domestic clutter kind of getting in the way of a goal that's pretty easy, like just getting out of her apartment.
Right. Yeah. Okay, you're also making me think of this great book called 40 Rooms by Olga Grushin, I think her name is. Mm-hmm. Oh God, that book's so good. But it's about this woman who, you should read it if you haven't. It's this woman who, she's a poet and she has all this promise as a poet. And there's all this like, her teachers have all this excitement about her future as a poet, and she has all this excitement about her potential as a poet, and she has this almost like sort of like mystical ability to like summon spirits kind of and talk to like this muse that appears. It's kind of like a ghost almost. And then but she also wants to get married and have kids, and she does, and they obtain this beautiful house, and she's really into her house. But then it, like, over the course of the book, she starts to realize, and you start to realize as the reader, that like the house is becoming her creative work, and like, and is taking all of like the juice out of her, kind of. And she has a moment where she's like, wait a minute, am I just a totally ordinary person just in a house now? Like, what happened to this art I used to have? What happened to this connection to this other realm, this like great gift I used to have of having these things speak through me? And it's like, God, it's really sad. But I think it really captures that like thing that can happen and that we're all kind of worried about. And my hope is that, like, sort of, because I feel like every mother writer I know is working through this. My hope is that it's like sort of we're figuring out how to evolve slightly, and like our daughters will have an easier time being able to balance these things and not feeling, being able to be a mother and not feel trapped in a room, or in a house or something.
Yeah, because we really were conditioned to feel like we can manage all of these things at the same time. The subhead of the series is dismantling the myth of having it all. And I think it is a myth. It's something that we grew up thinking, okay, like now we're liberated women, we can have careers, we can have families, we can have passions, we can have all the things we want if we just work hard enough or, are educated enough. And then to find that, like, yes, you might have all those things, but they're a mess. Like everything feels like it's crashing down on you, and you can't be 100% everywhere, and that you're failing in various places. So I think what you said, the word evolve, is so important in that I think, like, we are evolving, women and women's rights and so on, but the systems in place to support us in that evolution are not evolving with us.
That's right. That's true. Right. It's not really fair to say like, oh, our daughters will have it figured out, because like, sure, they will, but also, like, I think we all know that something that makes it impossible is, right, the structures that are in place that just make it impossible. Like the fact that, for so many people, childcare in this country costs more than their income. And like, we're in a moment right now where there's, historic numbers of women dropping out of the workplace because they're like, I can't manage my kids being at home and managing their homeschooling, whatever it is. And, for whatever reason, whether it's finances or the patriarchy or whatever, like the husband's career is being prioritized. And that's not a failing on the part of those women. It's like the system has failed.
Yeah, not only the system, but just to remind all of our listeners who might be feeling this way that we are in a global pandemic and it's unprecedented. So why are we, beating ourselves up for not accomplishing enough in a time that no one has ever lived through in our, no one living right now has been through a period like this. So there's no precedent for it. But that said, in the next couple of minutes that we have, I wonder, so we can't problem solve necessarily. We don't have any solutions for how to fix this.
7 minutes.
We have a few minutes to fix this. So let's talk about just a couple really easy things that we found, because we both have careers, we both have families, and we both have published books. So I think tell me what are some easy ways that you can recommend women prioritize their writing, even while they have careers and families, and during this weird global pandemic period? What can we do?
Well, it's weird. I feel like I'm cheating slightly, because for me, the pandemic has coincided with me like moving into my own place. It happened right before the pandemic, and co-parenting, so I know this isn't totally practical, but I truly believe that every couple should co-parent as if they are divorced and have 50-50 custody, because it's like the first time that since I've had kids that I've felt like I have the time and the bandwidth for everything. And it's because they have to be somewhere else every other weekends. It's like a legal matter now, And like, yes, I miss them when they're not here, but I have every other weekend to myself. And so I feel like I almost feel bad talking to my parent friends who are like, I'm freaking out. This is terrible. I never have a minute to myself. And I'm like, oh, I do. It's great. I really recommend it. It's really, I feel so much better because I always know that some time is coming to catch up on the work that I couldn't do in the kid career or write. And because the rest of the world is pretty shut down, it's really easy to like prioritize writing in that time. But in a more practical way, I think that it's like quarantine life or like semi-quarantine life that many of us are living now. It reminds me so much of when I was home with toddlers. It's like that because I never had any childcare or anything, so it's just like that like compressed time all together, all sort of being like stuck in the apartment or the house or whatever. And something that helped me in those times was like, okay, if I didn't have a space of my own, and I couldn't carve out time during the day. So it was this matter of like chipping away, like where is there some give? Like where can I create some time and space for myself? And for me in those years, it was early morning time. Like, all right, this is gonna suck, but for a couple years, I was like, I go to bed when the kids go to bed because I'm not like a person who's good on no sleep. Like I need the sleep. So I'd be like, all right, 9 o'clock, everyone's asleep. I'm going to sleep too. And then waking up at like 4:30 or 5 and just knowing that like, okay, the next few hours are mine and making that like sacred time. So it's like, okay, even if a kid wakes up earlier than they're supposed to, like they have to go do whatever or, you know, hand them the iPad or whatever. And and it's like sometimes this is a line from Norma Jean the Termite Queen. She's just talking about TV, which now seems super wholesome, but she's talking about turning on the TV. The character in that book is talking about turning on the TV in order to do her own artwork. So the kids will watch it and she can do her work. And she says sometimes you absolutely have to forget that like that their brains are being destroyed so that your brain can survive or something like that. Like, but their brains aren't really being destroyed, they're fine. But just like finding whatever time that is, or for some people it's like after the kid goes to bed, or something else that I think that helps is being really not precious about the amount of time you have. Like if you're like, okay, if you just tell yourself, all right, I'm gonna write for 15 minutes, and maybe it's going to be 15 minutes, but maybe it ends up being more. But it's like easier to commit to that when you're like, okay, yes, I'm tired. Yes, I should be doing something else. Yes, there's a pile of laundry, but I'm going to like face the other way from like the laundry that needs to be done, and just give myself at least 15 minutes or something like that. And also I think just like, I signed on very early in my parenting career to like outsourcing everything that could be outsourced, just being like, all right, you know what can be delivered? What can be ordered? What can someone else do? Like, I'm not going to be, precious about that. Like, let's just minimize my work.
I think that's great. That's a lot of wonderful advice, I think. And one of the parts that you said might not be relatable, the part where you co-parent and alternate weekends, I think that is relatable.
Ordered, make some time and get divorced. You're fine.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying too, though,
or not,
is that you don't have to write every day, and that if you can find a chunk of time that can be just yours, whether it's that your partner takes your child for 2 hours, or you go away to an Airbnb for 2 days, or you get up really early while they're sleeping, or stay up really late while they're sleeping, that it's not about, as you said, being precious with like every day at 4 p.m. I will write, 10 pages, that it's kind of like I think you also said cherishing that time and being like, I will prioritize it for myself. I will take it and claim it, and I will not give it to any of these little people who are so demanding in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah, and I feel like also not getting too attached to the ritual. Like, I feel like people love the idea that there's like some writing routine that you can set yourself up with, and that then it'll be like a magic formula. And like, okay, I'm gonna get, it's gonna be 5 a.m. every day, and I'm gonna light a candle, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna write, 1,000 words or whatever it is. But I feel like the problem with, like, and if that helps you, that's great. But the problem with setting yourself up for that is that then if you don't do it one day, or it gets ruined or interrupted, then, it's easy to be like, oh, well, now, this isn't working. Now I can't do this. Like, I think you have to give yourself the permission to have it be different every day, and it's fine if it's not a routine, and it's fine if it's not usual, and it's fine if it's not every day. Right now, I don't write my own stuff every day. It's like, I do write in like big chunks on weekends, but there's like no right way to do it.
No, and I think we've come full circle now to giving up control, right? So it's kind of like giving up control over those rituals and the preciousness and the, seeking out that chunk that you will use every day for your writing, and leaning into the fact that it's messy. And It's just like, sometimes you're writing next to laundry, and sometimes you're writing, in an Airbnb, and sometimes you're writing, dictating to yourself while you're driving to your kid's dance lesson or whatever. And
yeah, exactly. Do you know, Sarah Rule has this great book called 100 Essays I Don't Have Time to Write. And they're really great, and they're all these really short little like ideas for essays. And in one of the first ones, she writes about how she can't write these essays because her children are constantly interrupting her. And then she writes about having this moment of revelation where she realized, wait, life is not interrupting the work. Life is the work. This is the work. This is part of it. This is my life that I'm writing about. Which I feel like can be really liberating.
Absolutely. I think I need to go read that book right now. And it's a wonderful place for us to close on, I think. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining us again. I'm going to raise your book in the mirror image of StreamYard, Unseen City, and I'm going to put your website up here too, so that people can visit it and check out your tour schedule. Where will you be next?
Ooh, good question. This is actually like, things are calming down a little bit for me now after this. I'm doing a craft talk about setting in writing on October 26th, which is Monday at some time in the evening, probably 7 or 8, through the Resort, which is this great like co-working and writing space in Long Island City in Queens. And they're doing all this online programming, craft talks that are free for their members. And I think it's only like $15 or something if you're not a member, but I'll try to give you $15 worth. I really will. And then what else? And then we have something coming up in November. We're going to do a panel for Politics and Prose with some other great Red Hen Press writers about crushes in writing, which is like my favorite. When is that? Is it this? Oh, look at you.
Fancy.
Oh, is it the 17th?
I want to say it's November 17th. Yep. We'll keep people posted on that. Check out Facebook for details, or Amy's website. Again, I'll put it back up here. All the details.
It's on there.
And I can't wait to talk to you again.
I know. It's so much fun. I like that we do this every month.
Me too.
Good. So come up with a December thing. It's going to be great.
Sounds good.
Congratulations you on your book, which is, I feel like, a book that all mothers and humans should read, but it's a very good wild mother book.
Thank you so much.
Hello, for reading it.
Yeah, and thank you everyone who has been with us tonight on various platforms. We really appreciate you tuning in. We will post the recording, there you go, of this talk on social media, so you can catch it again. You can watch it every night if you want to, or share it with other writer moms.
Just like on a loop.
On a loop. And we'll be back next Thursday with Blair Hurley, so check in then. And thank you all so much. Signing off.
So much. Bye.